Hello, everyone, and namaskar. So, today's podcast is a continuation of the reading of the book titled Anandamurti, the Jamalpur Years. And this is a reading of the 30th chapter titled Past Lives. All knowledge, one's entire past history, and flashes of one's previous lives remain stored in sequential order in the causal mind, just like a colorful panorama. One layer representing one life, followed by a gap, followed by another layer representing another life, and so on. Human beings, if they so want, may try to relive those experiences in their memories. This endeavor is called sadhana, or spiritual practice. Sadhakas, or spiritual aspirants, by dint of sadhana, suspend their crude mind in the subtle mind, and the subtle mind in the causal mind. They can then clearly visualize that panorama of sequential events in the causal mind. As they have full control over the time factor, they can easily transcend the intervening gaps between the two lives and establish a link between them. A series of lives slowly and gradually unfold themselves like a moving panorama before their eyes. In late February 1964, Baba was traveling by car to Darbhanga for a DMC. When the car passed through Lahariya Sarai, Baba instructed the driver to turn west toward the station. When Jiteshananda, one of the new Avadutas, asked him why they were turning off from their route, Baba told him that he had some purpose and left it at that. Baba got out of the car when it reached the station without saying a word and walked toward the platform. The Margis and his entourage followed behind. Inside the station, Haraprasad Haldar was on the platform waiting for a train when he noticed Baba approaching. He tried to turn his face in the hope that Baba wouldn't notice him. "Where are you going?" Baba asked as he caught up to him. "Are you trying to avoid me? Come with me." Baba grabbed him by the elbow and escorted him out of the station and into the waiting car. When they arrived in Darbhanga, Baba went straight to the room that had been prepared for him and brought Haraprasad with him. When Haraprasad finally came out of Baba's room, the curious Margis who had been in the car crowded around him and asked him what was going on. "For some time now," Haraprasad said, "I've been feeling a strange force attracting me toward the Himalayas. I felt a longing to go there and dedicate myself to meditation. It kept getting stronger and stronger, to the point that I just couldn't put it out of my mind any longer. Finally, I took the decision to abandon my worldly life and spend the rest of my days in solitary meditation. Once I made up my mind, I decided to go visit my closest friends one last time, since I knew I would likely never see them again. But I was sure that if I saw Baba, he wouldn't allow me to go. Since I knew that he was scheduled to be in Darbhanga, I decided to catch a train for Gorakhpur in Lahariya Sarai, so I wouldn't have to pass through Darbhanga. But as you saw, Baba caught me anyhow. When he took me into his room, he scolded me for entertaining thoughts of abandoning my family and service to the society. Then he gave me direct orders to desist from any thought of fleeing to the Himalayas, now or ever. Later, the Margis got a chance to ask Baba about it as well, and he filled in some of the missing details. In Haraprasad's last life, he was a yogi who lived in a cave in the Himalayas. He was a disciple of a Himalayan master. One day, he went to the river to bring water, and he drowned. Though that was many years ago, his guru is still alive, and he still keeps Haraprasad's meditation seat and his water pot from that life. This is the source of the great attraction he feels towards those mountains. In fact, he actually started for the Himalayas on an earlier occasion, but he came back. Now I have forbidden him to make any further attempts. It would not be good for his spiritual progress. Another curious incident occurred during the Darbhanga DMC. An unknown woman approached the Margis in front of the house where Baba was staying and said she wanted to meet Baba. They informed her politely that Baba did not meet non-Margis, but if she wished, she could see him from a distance when he went for his customary walk. They thought nothing more of it until Baba sent word that there was a non-Margi woman outside the gate matching her description who should be sent away. They went outside and found her still sitting there, waiting for Baba to come out. They tried to get her to leave, as Baba had requested, but the woman would not budge. Finally, they gave up, unwilling to go against the mores of Indian culture, which demand that a high level of respect be shown toward women and the elderly. Sometime later, Baba came out. As he was getting into the car that would take him to the area chosen for his evening walk, the lady approached him. "What do you want, mother?" Baba asked. "Baba, I have brought this flower for you." Baba accepted the flower and got into the car. When the person sitting next to him in the back seat offered to hold the flower for him, Baba warned him and everyone else not to touch it. When they got out of the car for their walk, Baba was still holding the flower. Their route took them over a stream. As they were crossing the bridge, Baba stopped and explained to everyone that the lady who had given him the flower was an Avidya tantric. She has infused this flower with a certain power, so that anyone who willingly accepts it will come under her control. This power is called Samohani Vidya. After she gave it to me, she realized that her power had no effect over me. But if any of you touch it, you may be affected. Saying this, Baba dropped the flower off the bridge and into the flowing water. He then explained that this would nullify its effect. On March 4, just prior to his first visit to Anandanagar, Baba arrived in Dhanbad for a DMC program. Vishwanath acted as his local attendant. Baba arrived in the evening from Asansol in Kedarnath's car and was brought to the house of Sachidananda, where a room had been prepared for him. As he stepped onto the veranda, the Margi women welcomed him with lighted lamps and washed his feet with scented water, in the Bihari tradition. Sachidananda was lying on the veranda with a high fever, wrapped in a blanket, but he got up to garland Baba. Instead of Baba inclining his head to receive the garland and then giving namaskar as he usually did, Baba slapped him on his cheek hard enough that he lost his balance and fell. When he got up, the fever and pains were gone and would not return. The number of Margis who assembled the next day for DMC far exceeded expectations, and the organizers grew worried when it became obvious that the hall they had rented for the occasion would not hold everyone, no matter how tightly they packed it. While they were discussing what to do, a rich businessman pulled up in a new Mercedes and asked to speak to the organizers. "I have heard that you are religious people," he said, "and that you are planning a big function here in Dhanbad. I have a large building with all the facilities you need that I'd like to offer for your program, if you'd be willing to oblige me. I also have a new car that you can use." Surprised by this unexpected offer, the Margis went with him to inspect the building and found that it was exactly what they needed. They quickly arranged to move the DMC program there. Later on, they heard from the neighbors that the building was supposedly haunted and that the man who owned it was afraid to enter. He had been counting on the bhajans and kirtan to drive away the evil spirits. After the DMC was over, Vishwanath and Guru Gopal went into Baba's room to massage him. When Vishwanath began massaging Baba's head, he started to cry, overcome by the sad realization that Baba was leaving the next day for Anandanagar. "Don't cry," Baba told him. "Haven't you all promised that you will follow me wherever I go? You know, you have followed me here to this planet, and wherever I go next, you will be with me." The next morning, before Baba was scheduled to leave, Vishwanath was fanning him in his room. On Vishwanath's request, Pranay informed Baba that Vishwanath was going to have his exams the following week. Baba looked at Vishwanath, but didn't say anything at that moment. A few minutes later, however, while washing his hands, Baba instructed Vishwanath not to forget to repeat his second lesson mantra before beginning his exams. Then Baba went out to the car that was waiting to take him to the station. The businessman who had offered his building was waiting by the side of the car, along with the Margis, and Baba gave him his blessing, which was unusual since he was not initiated. The local Margis heard later from him that his wife, who had been childless for many years, had gotten pregnant after the DMC. This had been his unspoken wish when he saw Baba off. Vishwanath repeated a second lesson mantra before sitting for his exam, but when the results were posted, he was disappointed to learn that he had failed. Vexed with Baba, he borrowed some money and went to Jamalpur. In the evening, while sitting on the tiger's grave, he voiced his complaint. "Baba, you told me to do my second lesson before my exam, and I did, but I still failed." "Vishwanath, you failed because you are not sincere in your studies, and because you worship the goddess Sarasvati and ask for her help, which you know you should not do." Baba resumed talking with the other Margis, but a few minutes later, he returned back to Vishwanath and said, "There was a tabulation error in your workshop management paper. Go to the board and they will correct it." Vishwanath went to the board. After reviewing the paper, they found that one question had been tabulated incorrectly. They changed it and he passed, though just barely. In late March, Baba surprised the Margis by deciding to hold the DMC in the small village of Ambagan in the northeastern state of Assam. On the afternoon of the DMC, Baba asked his attending secretary, Acharya Sambhudananda, to take him to the Lao Kowa Reserve Forest, an elephant corridor and rhinoceros preserve about 8 kilometers outside the village. Sambhudananda arranged for a car and set off with Baba and 3 local Margis, Indra Talukdar, Yogeshwar Barua, and Umesh. As they neared the forest, Sambhudananda started to turn onto an outlying route that would take them along the outskirts of the reserve. But Baba told them to take the road that passed through the middle of the jungle. That road soon turned into a narrow dirt path that wound its way through the densest part of the forest. The 3 Margis started to grow apprehensive, uncomfortably aware of the possible consequences of running into an adult elephant or rhinoceros in the middle of the wilderness. As the twilight shadows deepened, they quietly suggested to Sambhudananda that he turn back. Sambhudananda paid no attention to them. He knew better than to suggest such a thing to Baba after having received direct instructions. A little farther on, the Margis' fears were confirmed. One of them spotted a rhinoceros with her calf about 100 meters up the road. He cried out a warning. Sambhudananda looked back at Baba. Seeing Baba smiled, he continued onward at a careful pace. While the 3 Margis grew increasingly tense, aware of the danger that the rhinoceros might attack them in order to protect their calf. When they were about 10 to 15 meters away from the rhinoceros and her calf, Baba asked Sambhudananda to stop the car. Baba got out and started walking toward the animals, with Sambhudananda trailing close behind. One by one, the other disciples, struggling to master their fear, stepped casually out of the car and followed as well. Baba walked up to the mother rhinoceros and started stroking her calloused back, while her confused calf moved from one side of her to the other. After a minute or two, he began stroking the calf. The calf's mother looked on silently, without making the slightest movement. Finally, Baba began to whisper something in the mother rhino's ear, in a language none of the Margis could understand. Emboldened by Baba's example and the seeming tameness of this otherwise imposing animal, the 4 disciples also patted her and her calf. By this time, it was starting to grow quite dark. Baba asked Sambudananda to turn the car around so they could leave. As he was doing so, the headlights fell on the rhinoceros. The Margis were astonished to see tears falling from her eyes. On the way back to Ambagan, Yogeshwar asked Baba why the mother rhinoceros had acted so docilely in his presence. "You are little children," Baba said. "You will understand it when you grow up." Umesh mentioned the rhinoceros' tears and asked why she had seemed to be crying. "She was crying because she was remembering her past life," Baba said. "In her past life, she was a human being. She was my friend." Sometime later, Baba was traveling to Calcutta for a program. On the way, his train passed through Sahebganj. As usual, a great throng of Margis came to the station to have his darshan while the train was stopped at the platform. Among them was a newly initiated couple, Ramchandra Gope and his wife, Chandravati. Like many Indian wives, she had taken initiation because her husband had done so, but within a few days, she had second thoughts about the wisdom of her decision. For one thing, she had been a devout devotee of Krishna since childhood. She had long since grown attached to the idol of Krishna that she kept on her altar and the comfort of her daily ritual worship. In her initiation, she was given a mantra designed to cultivate a sense of identity with the Supreme Consciousness. This didn't seem right to her. How can God and I be one, she thought. As she looked at Krishna on her altar, he is there, wherever he is, and I am here. It not only seemed absurd, it seemed downright blasphemous. And then there was another thing. Her acharya was her sister's husband. With the intimacy born of close family ties, he had assured her and her husband that Anandamurti was a living God. This didn't seem right either. How could any human being be a living God? When she heard of Baba's forthcoming visit, she decided that she would put the master to the test and resolve her doubts once and for all. If he passed the test, then she would continue her meditation. But if he failed, then she would give it up and go back to her worship of Krishna. The test Chandravati devised was a simple one. She had heard how people would bring garlands and place them around the Guru's neck as a sign of reverence. Due to the great number of devotees, it was not an easy thing to be able to garland the Guru personally. Normally, he would accept 1 or 2, and the rest would be handed to his personal assistant for him to bless. She decided to bring a garland with her to the station, but she would not make any effort to offer it to the master. If he were really the living God that her brother-in-law said he was, then he would know her mind and would ask her for the garland personally. If he did not, then she would know that he was not what they said he was, and she can go back happily to her traditional worship. When Baba's train pulled in, several hundred devotees were there to receive him, many of them with garlands of their own. Chandravati hung near the back, waiting to see if Baba would call for her, until finally the whistle sounded and the train started to pull away. She had been hoping for just that outcome, anxious to be able to give up her meditation and return to her traditional worship. But when she saw the train pulling out, she felt a pang of disappointment, as if deep within, she had been hoping that he really could be a living God. Moments later, her husband caught up to her, his enthusiasm bubbling over, and told her that they would have another chance in a few days to see the master, when his train passed back through Sahebganj on the return trip. Chandravati thought about it for a moment. As long as I take care of the garland, she thought, keep it in a box, and sprinkle some water over it, at intervals, it can last for a few days. I suppose I can give him one more chance. Without saying anything to her husband, she kept the garland as fresh as she could and returned to the station with him a few days later. Again she remained at the back of the crowd while her husband pressed forward, eager to get as close to Baba as he could. She kept her head down and waited while everyone brought their garlands to Baba. A couple of women urged her to go forward and give Baba her namaskar and her garland, but she replied politely that it wasn't necessary. Finally, the guard waved the green flag and the whistle sounded. This time her disappointment turned to anger. She pictured herself running forward and throwing her garland at Baba. She started rehearsing in her mind the scolding she would give her acharya at the first opportunity. But for some reason the train did not move. Several Margis went to inquire about the problem. They came back and informed Baba that the station officials did not know what was wrong. Everything seemed to be in working order, but for some unknown reason, the train was not moving. Suddenly, Chandravati was jolted out of her angry reverie. Anxious voices informed her that Baba was calling for her. She inched forward toward the open window of Baba's compartment, while Baba requested everyone else to stand aside and make room for her. "Mother," Baba said, when she reached his compartment, "have you not brought a garland for me? You know, this train will not move until you have given me your garland." Chandravati brushed aside her tears and placed a garland over Baba's neck. Baba gave her his namaskar. At that moment, the whistle sounded again, and the train started to move. Baba paid his second visit to Anandanagar in April of that year. The whole-timer training center had been shifted there from Jamalpur late the previous year, and one of the trainees was a former deputy personal manager in the Ranchi firm of Usha Martin Black. In those days, Kedarnath and Kshitij used to search Ranchi and its vicinity for spiritually minded persons whom they could convince to take initiation in Anandamarga. In late 1963, they heard about a certain Vijay Kumar Mishra, a respected, well-educated young man in his late 20s from a well-known family who was considered by many to be an elevated soul. People claimed that he kept total fast during Durga Puja. During his fast, the goddess Durga would appear before him in white robes and give him instructions that he would follow for the rest of the year. They got his home address and went there one afternoon to talk to him. Vijay received him in a cordial manner and listened attentively, while the two acharyas talked about Anandamarga practices and ideology. After they had been talking for a few minutes, a couple of visitors appeared in the doorway. Vijay excused himself and said, "There is an important matter that I have to discuss with these gentlemen. I won't be long." He stepped out onto the veranda. From inside the sitting room, Kedarnath and Kshitij could hear him scolding the two men. "Why do you persist in bothering me about getting married? I told you yesterday that I don't intend to get married. Just give it up." When Vijay came back in, he apologized for the interruption, lit up a cigarette, and explained that the two men were relatives who were continually bothering him with marriage proposals. "Why don't you want to get married?" Kshitij inquired politely. "Well, that's a long story. In brief, however, my mother was childless for a long time. She didn't think she could ever have a child. Then one night, she dreamed that she saw a great yogi sitting in a shrine. When she approached the yogi, he blessed her and offered her a coconut. He told her that after she ate the coconut, she would conceive a child, and her child would become a great saint. Just after she had the dream, my mother got pregnant. So she had this conviction that her baby would become a saint. My father was an astrologer and something of a fortune teller. When I was born, he cast my horoscope, and he also predicted that I would become a saint. Some friends of his, who were also astrologers, came to the same conclusion, and ever since I was a young child, I've been devoted to spiritual life and spiritual practices. If I were to marry, the girl would have to face great hardship, so it's better I don't marry. But even after marriage, a person can practice yoga and achieve liberation, Kedar interjected. Be that as it may, I still think it better that I don't marry. The two acharyas continued talking about Anandamarga, while Vijay smoked one cigarette after another and listened with obvious interest. Finally, they asked him if he were interested in taking initiation. I will take initiation when I find the right guru. In the meantime, Kshitij said, there is no harm in learning the technique and trying it out for some time. Vijay agreed and took initiation from Kshitij. 4 or 5 days later, he showed up at Kshitij's house, complaining that he was facing a certain problem in his meditation. Every time I meditate, I have the same vision. A beautiful olive-skinned hand appears wearing a gold ring with a pearl inset on the middle finger. The hand is holding a lighted cigarette, which it brings to my mouth, but when I try to take a puff, the hand vanishes. Then it appears again, several times in succession. Every time I meditate, the same vision disturbs me. Since it began, I've started developing an aversion to smoking. Can you explain this? Do you think you would be able to recognize this hand if you saw it in real life, especially if it had the same ring on it? Kshitij asked, sure that the hand Vijay had seen was Baba's. Certainly. I've seen it so many times by now. If you want to see the hand, then you must go to Jamalpur and visit our ashram there. Okay, Vijay answered, without any hesitation. I'm ready to do that if it will solve this mystery. How many days leave will I need to take? You should take 4 or 5 days. Your work will be done in 1 day, but you will need that much time to be able to process your experience and understand it. I know you have a very high position with heavy responsibility in your firm. Do you think you will be able to get that much time off, or will it create problems for your business? It will be difficult, but I will manage somehow. Kshitij gave him the address. A few days later, Vijay informed him that he had gone 4 days' leave and had booked a reservation for Jamalpur for the following day. Kshitij informed Kedarnath of the news, and they were both anxious to hear what Vijay would say when he came back. But the time for his return came and went, and Vijay didn't show up. 2 weeks passed, and still there was no word from him. Vijay's relatives came to Kshitij, anxious to find out what had happened to him. Kshitij gave them the address in Jamalpur, but there was little else he could do, since he was unable to go himself at that time. It was a full month before Vijay returned. When he did, he went straight to Kshitij's house. The elegantly dressed personnel officer, who generally wore the finest tailored suits, was now dressed in a simple white cotton kurta and pajama pants. His proud demeanor had been replaced by a humble expression. He appeared to be on the verge of weeping. Vijay bent over and touched Kshitij's feet. Charyaji, you have changed my life. The day you came into my house was a turning point in my life. Because of your help, I have found the right path. I have decided to leave everything and dedicate my life to Baba. The next day, Vijay arrived at Kshitij's house with 2 trucks loaded with his belongings. Now that he was going to become a whole-timer, he wanted to donate everything to Anandamarga. He even took off his watch and handed it to Kshitij. But Kshitij told him to keep it. You will need it, he said, because as a whole-timer, you will have to properly utilize every second of your life. On April 9, Baba arrived for his second visit to Anandanagar. Kshitij and Kedar made the short trip from Ranchi along with many other Margis to attend the program. When they went looking for Vijay, they were surprised to find him working in the kitchen, washing pots and pans, with his lungi doubled up above his knees. When Kshitij asked him why he was working in the kitchen, he told him in a humble voice that some Margis had had to catch the train, so they had made rice pudding for them, and he was doing the washing up. Kshitij felt proud that his initiate was such a good soul, glad to see that this man who had servants in his entire life to do his menial work was now happy to be a humble servant to his brother disciples. Kshitij and Kedarnath went up to Baba's room. When they entered, Baba asked him where Vijay was. "He's washing pots, Baba," Kshitij answered. "Call him. I'm going to catch his thread." Kshitij smiled and ran back to the kitchen. When Vijay protested that he was dirty and would have to take a bath first, Kshitij said, "What are you saying? There's no time for that. When Baba calls you, you don't keep him waiting. Just wash your hands and feet quickly and come." Vijay washed his hands and feet, let down his lungi, and followed his acharya to Baba's room. When they got there, Kshitij started massaging Baba's feet and asked Vijay to massage his back, which he did after some slight hesitation. Baba was quiet, but hunched his shoulders once or twice, as if it felt uncomfortable. Then he told them to sit down. He was going to tell them a story. 300 years ago, Baba began. On the outskirts of Rewa, there was a great yogi, a realized soul, who lived in an ashram with his disciples. One of his disciples was a young man from a wealthy royal family who had come to the ashram at an early age, leaving behind his comfortable life to dedicate himself to the spiritual path. This boy was a highly elevated soul with a pure mind who had almost no material desires other than a weakness for sweet fruits. One day, the Guru called him to his room to tell him that he would be out of the ashram for a few days and that he was leaving him in charge. His one admonishment was not to violate any of the ashram rules while he was gone. The boy promised, and the master left for his trip. While he was gone, the Queen of Rewa paid a visit to the ashram, as was the habit in those days among royal families. During her visit, she was attracted by the spiritual aura of the boy. Being childless herself, she conceived a desire to adopt him and make him her heir. When she conveyed her feelings to the boy, he disappointed her by replying, "Mother, I was born into a royal family. I have left everything behind to come and learn meditation at the feet of my Guru. As he is happy with me, he is teaching me. Please don't ask me to go back to what I left behind. It cannot be." The queen was saddened by his answer, but she accepted his decision. As a parting gift, she offered him some gold and silver ornaments for the support of the ashram. It was a strict rule, however, that the disciples could not accept anything from outside without the permission of the Guru. He explained to her why he could not accept her offer. "You see," she said, after listening to his explanation, "I am like a mother to you. If your mother offers you something, you should accept it. If you cannot accept the ornaments, then at least accept the coconut from me." The boy didn't want to offend her any more than he already had. Furthermore, he had a weakness for coconuts. It is only a coconut, he thought. Surely this much will be okay. So he accepted. The queen cut the coconut up into pieces and offered it to the boy, who ate some and saved the rest, thinking to offer it to his Guru, who was due back at any time. Then the queen took her leave. The next day the Guru returned. As soon as he entered the ashram, he called his disciples to his room. In an angry tone of voice he told him, "It is a rule in this ashram that no disciple can accept anything without my permission, and you have violated this rule just for the sake of a coconut. How can you think you are fit to learn yoga from me if you cannot follow these simple rules?" The boy left his master feeling distraught and depressed. For a long time, the thought of his mistake haunted his mind. He died shortly thereafter. Due to his mistake and the force of this thought in his mind, he had to take birth in his next life as a coconut palm, and he remained in that body for nearly 300 years. By this time, Vijay was crying silently. Baba looked at him and said, "Now tell me, Vijay, is there any connection between your birth and a coconut?" "Yes, Baba." Kshitij and Kedar also had tears in their eyes, but now they had realized that the story was about Vijay. Kshitij noticed that Baba was lying back on his cot in Apar Chakra Mudra, a posture that signifies that if the Guru tells the disciple to ask for something, and the disciple expresses his desire, then that wish will be fulfilled. Again, Baba looked at Vijay and said, "Tell me, Vijay, what do you want?" Vijay kept silent. Again, Baba asked him. This time, Vijay did Sastang Pranam. Crying softly, he said, "Baba, I don't want anything. Just give me the strength to serve your mission until I die. I don't want anything else." Baba sat up, leaned over, and touched Vijay on his Agya Chakra. Vijay fell backward in Samadhi. Then Baba excused himself and said that he needed to use the bathroom. When he came back, he told the two family acharyas to cover Vijay with a blanket and not disturb him, since he was in intense bliss. A little while later, he asked them to move the still unconscious Vijay to Pranay's room. Kshitij took the opportunity to question Baba about the story. Why, he asked, did the disciple have to suffer such a great punishment for such a little offense? For him, it was not a little offense, Baba said. The higher one climbs on the ladder of spirituality, the greater the repercussions for any fault. If an acharya and a general margi commit the same mistake, the acharya's punishment will be greater, because he has been given the greater responsibility. That disciple was a great yogi who went against the instructions of his guru, so accordingly, he was given a severe punishment. This is the Leela of Paramapurusha. One evening in early April, in Muzaffarpur, Shashi Ranjan's teenage son, Kartik Ranjan, started feeling stiffness in his neck and back. When Gudu, as he was better known to family and friends, woke up in the morning, it had gone worse. So he went to a Hakim, who adjusted his spine, but he left the Hakim's office feeling even worse. The following morning, it got so bad that he found it difficult to move. He was unable to do anything without the help from the family servant. His father, then a prominent MP in the Congress Party, became alarmed. Being a man of means, he was able to take his son to several of the best specialists in the Bihar capital of Patna, but none of them could give him a firm diagnosis. The nerves on the left side of the body appeared to be damaged, but they had no idea of the cause. They recommended immobilizing the patient for an extended period of time and prescribed painkillers. Gudu was put into a body cast, but several weeks went by with no improvement in his condition. His father arranged for several other specialists to see him, hoping that one of them could make an appropriate diagnosis and suggest a better course of treatment, but they could do no better than the previous doctors. In late April, Baba's tour program took him through Delhi on his way to Jammu for a DMC. During the one-day layover, he was scheduled to give general darshan and go on field walk with the local margis. The margis, aware of Gudu's condition, suggested to Shashi Ranjan, now back in Delhi, that he ask Baba for his help. But Shashi Ranjan was hesitant to do so. Baba knows everything, he said. There is no need to tell him. Baba knows what's best for Gudu. But they repeated their suggestions, and he reluctantly agreed. Baba arrived by plane from Varanasi on the afternoon of the 24th. In the early evening, the margis gathered for field walk and general darshan at Shashi Ranjan's 93 North Avenue quarters, where Baba was staying. As usual, the margis lined up near Baba's car and began singing devotional songs. When Baba came out, he greeted everyone with namaskar and chatted with the margis for a few minutes inquiring about their health and welfare. Quietly, the Margis urged Shashi Ranjan to speak to Baba about Gudu. But now that Shashi Ranjan was in the master's presence, he found that he couldn't go through with it. All he could do was pray silently to Baba to do whatever he felt best. As Baba passed by Shashi Ranjan on the way to his car, he stopped and asked him how he was. "And how is Gudu?" he said. That simple question was enough. Overcome by emotion, Shashi Ranjan told Baba in a halting voice what had happened. Baba nodded his head slowly. "Don't worry," he said. "Note down this address." Baba gave him the name and address of a doctor in Burwan. "Take Gudu to see him. He should be able to help." Shashi Ranjan was elated. As soon as Baba left Delhi, he returned to Muzaffarpur and made travel arrangements for Burwan. A couple of days later, he and Gudu were installed in a Burwan hotel with Gudu's medicines and his wheelchair. Shashi Ranjan hired a rickshaw and asked the driver to take him to the address Baba had written, the medical clinic of Dr. Shailin Mukherjee. He assumed that Dr. Mukherjee would be a specialist in neurology or perhaps orthopedic medicine. But as the rickshaw wound its way into one of the poorer sections of town, Shashi Ranjan began to wonder what kind of specialist would have his offices in such a humble area. He asked the rickshaw driver if he was sure he had the right address, but the driver simply nodded and kept on pedaling. Finally, they pulled up in front of a somewhat dilapidated one-story bungalow. As Shashi Ranjan paid the rickshaw driver his fare, he saw the small signboard with faded letters hanging to the right of the wooden door. Shailin Mukherjee, MBBS. It was the right place, undoubtedly. But the MBBS next to his name made it clear that Dr. Mukherjee was not a specialist. He began to feel uneasy, but he tried to stifle his worry. If Baba had sent him here, he thought, there had to be a reason. He took his Guru mantra, put his faith in Baba, and went and knocked on the door. A man wearing a lungi and a stained t-shirt opened it. His mouth was bright red from chewing a betel nut preparation. "Yes?" the man asked. "I'm looking for Dr. Shailin Mukherjee." "How can I help you?" "Are you Dr. Mukherjee?" Shashi asked, momentarily surprised. "Yes." Shashi Ranjan took a deep breath. "My son is very ill. My guru gave me your address and told me to send him here for treatment." The doctor looked surprised. "Your guru? What is his name?" "Shrii Shrii Anandamurti, or Pravat Ranjan Sarkar." "I'm sorry, but I don't know your guru. I've never heard of him. How is it he sent you to me?" "I can't say, but if he sent me here, there has to be a reason." The doctor invited him in and listened patiently while he described Gudu's symptoms and the diagnosis and treatment prescribed by the different specialists in Patna. "To be honest," the doctor said, "I don't know what I can do for your son that the specialist you consulted couldn't do. I am a simple MBBS. I give some basic allopathic treatment and occasionally some homeopathic remedies to the people of this area. If they can pay me a few rupees, I am happy. However, you've come all this way and your guru gave you my address. If you want to bring your son here, I will try to do my best. I can't promise anything more than that." Shashi Ranjan was not very hopeful, especially when he learned, after some inquiries, that the doctor had a drinking problem and had been divorced and remarried to one of his patients. But he was determined to follow Baba's instructions. The next day, he arranged for a car to bring Gudu to Dr. Mukherjee's clinic. The doctor examined him. After informing Shashi Ranjan that he had nothing more to tell him about the disease other than what he already knew, he gave Gudu a cortisone shot, some massage, and a homeopathic remedy. He told him to bring him back the next day. The following morning, Gudu felt slightly better, or at least it seemed so, and this gave Shashi Ranjan some encouragement. He continued bringing him to the clinic each day, and each day Gudu responded with some slight improvement. The doctor wasn't sure what was working or why, but he was happy to see the improvement. He enjoyed the young man's company and continued to give him massages and homeopathic remedies. Shashi Ranjan and Gudu remained there for 20 days, by the end of which Gudu was about 80% recovered. He could walk, though he walked with a limp and needed to use a cane. The pain was mostly gone, except when he remained sitting or standing for too long in one position, or when he got up in the morning. At the end of 20 days, Shashi Ranjan thanked Dr. Mukherjee and took Gudu back to Muzaffarpur, hopeful that with the medicines the doctor sent with him, he would soon be entirely well. Once Gudu was back in Muzaffarpur, however, there was no further improvement. Sometime afterward in Jamalpur, Sujit, who was also from Muzaffarpur and well known to the family, asked Baba why Dr. Mukherjee had been able to help Gudu when a number of renowned specialists in Patna had failed. Baba smiled. The medicines had nothing to do with it, Sujit. It was a matter of samskaras. You see, Gudu's disease was due to a very old samskara. Around 900 years ago, Gudu was born as a wealthy landowner's son in the Jalpaiguri district of North Bengal. As he was growing up, the boy developed an unsavory character. As a teenager, he would squander his father's wealth, carousing with his friends, and engaging in all sorts of bad behavior. His father was a pious man, an honest man. He did his best to try to reform his son, but the boy only despised him all the more for it. This greatly distressed his father. When the boy came of age, the father decided to forcibly curtail his spending. He informed his son that he was going to withhold from him his inheritance unless and until he reformed his character. The boy became incensed. One day, he approached his father in an inebriated state and demanded his inheritance. The father tried to reason with him. He told him he could consider releasing his inheritance once the boy reformed his character. But his son didn't want to hear this. Finally, the father refused, and the boy lost his temper. He grabbed a heavy cane that was lying nearby and started beating his father out of anger. A couple of blows landed on the man's head and left him bleeding. He fell to the ground senseless and died some days later from the injury. Now those samskaras have ripened, and Gudu is paying the price for his actions in the form of this disease. There was nothing any medicine could do for him. The samskara had to be exhausted. However, I saw that the boy's father from that life had also incarnated at this time. He was living as a doctor in Burwan. I knew that if some attachment could develop between the two, then this would help to exhaust the samskara. So I asked Shashi Ranjan to bring Gudu there. While he was there, the doctor developed a strong sense of affection for Gudu, as did Gudu for the doctor. The doctor was sorry to see such a nice young man suffering in this way. He started to develop a strong desire to see him get well. It wasn't the doctor's medicines or his treatments that helped, but rather this desire and the compassion he felt. For the next 8 years, Gudu was able to lead a normal life, but he had to learn to live with some measure of pain and a constant limp that forced him to carry a walking stick. Near the end of 1971, Baba was admitted into Patna Medical Hospital for tests. A group of Margis was accompanying him down the hallway to a room where some tests were scheduled. Gudu, who was there with Shashi Ranjan, quietly asked the Margi pushing Baba's wheelchair to allow him to do it. When they reached the doorway, Baba asked who was wheeling the chair. Baba, it's me, Gudu. Oh, it's you, Gudu. Were you pushing my chair? But are you not unwell? Come, let me see you. Gudu moved forward and did pranam. Tell me, Gudu, where exactly do you feel the pain? Gudu told him. Baba reached out his hand and touched those areas. Now you will not die from the disease, he said. As Baba touched him, Gudu felt a shock run through him like an electric current. He felt as if he had just been relieved of a heavy load. The pain was gone. For the first time in nearly 8 years, he could straighten up without discomfort and throw away his cane. After spending most of March and April on tour, Baba was back in the office for the summer. On Wednesday, May 27, Baba unexpectedly came to the Jagrati during the day. As he entered the gate, Dasara saw him and did namaskar. Baba asked him if he were able to see any bodiless mind. Dasarath concentrated for a moment and noticed the presence of a bodiless mind. Whose bodiless mind is this? Baba asked. Dasarath concentrated for some moments more and then said in a shocked tone of voice, Baba, it is the bodiless mind of Jawaharlal Nehru. Yes, Baba replied. He left his body a short while ago. The news has not yet been announced. The Baba had been an outspoken critic of Nehru's foreign policy, especially his part in the debacle with China 2 years earlier, and had pointed out certain faults in his character. He also had many positive things to say about Nehru's role in India's independence and the formation of the new nation. As the Margis followed him into his room, he described how Nehru's bodiless mind was searching for a new body as they spoke. He talked for a long time about his life and even described his past life in which he had been a sadhu who had conceived a strong desire for power, creating a samskara that had led him to great political power in this life. Finally, he asked him one by one to sing bhajans in their mother tongues to commemorate his passing. That summer, Ashish Kumar Pandey, a resident of nearby Trimohan, paid his first visit to Jamalpur. He had been initiated early in the year and had first seen Baba at the end of March, when Baba's train halted at Bhagalpur Junction. He had not been impressed at the time. Baba had been seated by the window. 4 sannyasis stood close by. He asked a nearby Margi which one was Baba, and was disappointed to find out that he was a clean-shaven gentleman in the white clothes. Thinking back to the stories he had heard, that Baba knew everything, that he would punish his disciples for mistakes in their past that even they had forgotten, he dismissed them as pure propaganda. But at the end of May, with his health worsening, he decided to go to Jamalpur to have PC, in the hope that it might help. He got written permission from his acharya, Baldeva, and took along his friend, Niwas Chandra Saha, a confirmed rebeler who would only refrain from drinking 1 day a week, Tuesday, Dharma Chakra Day. They arrived in the ashram about 8 in the morning. When Baba arrived, Ashish was surprised to see how different he looked up close. He became aware of an aura of great power that emanated from him. For the first time, he began to feel afraid of getting punished. When the line formed for PC, Ashish was first, and he was right behind him. Ashish entered Baba's room and prostrated in front of him as instructed. Baba asked him his name and where he lived, and then began describing his house and his neighborhood, and the route that he would take home each day, as well as other details that he couldn't possibly have known. Ashish was surprised and curious. Baba asked him to admit his wrong deeds and prepare himself to accept punishment for them. When Ashish denied that he had done anything wrong, Baba caught him by the ear and started scolding him. For the next 20 to 30 minutes, Baba described a long litany of his misdeeds, beginning with his childhood and continuing up to only a few days before. Ashish perspired more and more profusely. He wondered how Baba could have possibly known these things. You thought that nobody was seeing you but the darkness, Baba said. But the entity in your heart was witnessing everything. When he was done pointing out his mistakes, Baba asked him if everything he had said was correct. Yes, Baba. Then what kind of punishment do you want? Natural or social? Or should I punish you? It is better if you do it, Baba, Ashish replied. Baba brought out his stick from behind him on the cot and started beating Ashish on his back. After a few good thwacks, Ashish grabbed Baba's hand. Baba, this is not the way to beat me. You should beat me in different spots, not at one spot. As Ashish was saying this, he was surprised by the strength in Baba's arm. Ashish was a strong man, a wrestler, but he instinctively felt that he couldn't maintain his grip on Baba's wrist with one hand, so he grabbed it with both hands. Baba flicked his wrist, and Ashish was thrown to the floor. Realizing that it was futile to use physical force with Baba, he got up and requested Baba politely to beat him in different places, not at one spot. Come here, Baba ordered him in a grave voice. Ashish approached the cot once again, and Baba beat him until he fell unconscious. Then Baba pressed his thumb to his forehead, and he regained consciousness. As soon as he was conscious again, Ashish cried out, Please, Baba, I can't tolerate anymore. The thought crossed his mind that he wouldn't be able to lie down for months. Okay, come here. I won't beat you anymore. Baba started caressing his back. Ashish felt a cooling sensation as the bruised skin healed itself and the pain disappeared. Baba, how did you know all those things? He asked. Paramashiva told me. Baba made him promise to do only good deeds from then on and serve the suffering humanity. When Ashish finally came out from Baba's room, his friend, Niwas Chandra, was shaking with fear. What happened to you will certainly happen to me, he said. I have never done a good deed in my life. When the Acharya in charge of PC called out Niwa's name, he fell to the ground, shivering with fear. It took a concerted effort from Ashish and several others to finally convince him to go into Baba's room. He came out 5 minutes later, saying that he was saved. Baba had told him that he would not beat him, but he had to promise to do good deeds from then on and lead a sober and pious life. True to his word, Niwas Chandra gave up drinking and became a good Margi. He would claim ever afterward that Baba had given him a new life. As usual, Baba continued to give regular demonstrations that summer. One evening in General Darshan, he called Shyama Sundar Goenka to the front and asked him to tell him his permanent address. Shyama Sundar, a young businessman from a wealthy Bombay family, who was there with his wife, recited the street address of his house. Baba told Dasarath to gaze into his mental plate and see where he had been 50 years back. Dasarath concentrated for a few moments and then said that he was working in an office in Colombo. He described the scene in which he was asleep at his desk when his boss came in and started scolding him. No, he was not sleeping, Baba said. He was doing meditation. He was a sadhaka in his past life. Now go further back and see where he was 125 years ago. This time Dasarath said that he was living in a Portuguese colony in Africa at that time. Baba turned to Sudarshan, who was sitting nearby, and asked him where his permanent address was. My permanent address is Paramapurusha, Sudarshan replied. Yes, you have given the correct answer. In this entire creation, there is only one permanent address, one destination, and that is Paramapurusha. On another occasion, Sachidananda Srivastava, brought his son from Gorakhpur to see Baba. His son was quite ill at the time. When Baba came to the Jagrati and saw the boy's condition, he started scolding Sachidananda for not bringing his son to a doctor when the disease was still in its beginning stages. Now the disease has become fatal, he said, shaking his head. Baba called Dasarath over and asked him to see how long the boy would survive. Not long, Dasarath said, after closing his eyes and concentrating for some moments. Very well then, gather round. I am going to do a demonstration about death. Baba asked the boy to sit in meditation posture and concentrate his mind. As he had done nearly 10 years earlier, Baba ordered the bayous to leave the body one by one. The boy fell over unconscious. Baba asked the doctor, who was present, to examine the boy for signs of life. There were none. The boy was not breathing, nor did he have a pulse. Yes, Baba said. According to your medical science, he is dead. But actually there is still life in the body. He can be revived by divine power, as long as he does not remain in this state for more than half an hour or so. Baba explained the process of dying for some minutes more. Then he revived the boy. He told Sachidananda to give him lemon water with salt, morning and evening, until he was totally cured. He gave him some other instructions as well. Within 2 weeks, his son was fully recovered. In another general darshan, a Margi gentleman came to Baba complaining of severe stomach pains. He had been to the doctor and taken the prescribed medicines, but he had failed to get any relief. Baba called Dasarath and asked him to concentrate his mind. Look into his stomach and tell me what you see. Dasarath began describing a round black tumor-like ulcer. Yes, he has had a chronic gastric problem for some years now that has gone untreated. In time, it became a peptic ulcer, and now it has entered into the first stages of cancer. As his condition stands, he cannot survive much longer. Baba took his stick and began drawing circles on his stomach with the tip. Now, Dasarath, look again and describe his condition. Baba, the area is no longer black. I cannot see any tumor now. Baba gave the Margi instructions to abstain from certain types of foods and to work sincerely for the mission. Do this and everything will be all right. 75% I have cured. The rest you will have to do yourself. Afterward, the Margi told everyone that when Baba touched him with his stick, he felt a painful burning sensation for a few moments, and then nothing. The pain he had been suffering from was completely gone. That summer, Baba gave Pranay instructions to prepare to shift his office to Anandanagar. You are not doing anything without my pressure, Baba said. So now I am going to give you pressure to shift your office. Go there and build up the ashram. Pranay did not warm up to the idea. He did not see the logic behind locating the global headquarters of the organization in such a desolate, isolated place. His previous visits had convinced him that Anandanagar was unsafe as well as uncomfortable. But Baba left him no choice. Later in the year, he resigned from his job at the railway workshop, and he and Pramila made preparations to move to Anandanagar, to set up the central office and oversee the construction of the various projects. His wife would enjoy the adventure and the camaraderie with the young workers posted there, but her husband would never completely adjust. In November, Baba conducted a DMC in Ranchi. One morning, Acharya Sarangi arrived at Kshitij's house, where Baba was staying. Just as Baba was getting ready to shave, Sarangi arranged a table, a chair, a mirror, and a basin of water for him. As Baba was sitting on the chair shaving, Sarangi asked him a question. Baba, you tell us often of Ananda Parivara, of establishing a brotherhood among all the people of the world. Would it really be possible to do that, in reality? Baba kept silent for a few moments, staring into the mirror as he shaved. Then he looked at Sarangi and asked, "Have you read the Mahabharata?" "Very little. I haven't gone through it in detail." "Are you aware that there was a battle on the field of Kurukshetra?" "Yes." "Do you also know that the battle took place between the Pandavas and the Kauravas?" "Yes, Baba." "Then you must also know that the Pandavas won the battle." "Yes." "I see. Do you know that there were only 5 Pandava brothers, whereas there were 100 Kaurava brothers?" "Yes, I know." "Then why did you tell me that you knew hardly anything about the Mahabharata?" Sarangi smiled, but he didn't say anything. "So, what is the lesson that the Mahabharata teaches?" Again, Sarangi remained silent. "The moral of the Mahabharata is that 5% moralists can conquer 100% immoralists. That is, if 5% of the society becomes moralists, then a strong moralist society can be created. That is your mission. Make 5% of the society moralist." "Baba, that is an impossible task." "Then make 3%. "But Baba," Sarangi objected, "the mission of Anandamarga is so difficult. What to speak of 3%? Even 0.03% is near impossible." Baba paused for a few moments. "Then do one thing," he said. "Let the world know that there is an organization named Anandamarga. Let them know what it stands for. That's all. If you can do this, then our purpose will be served and the goal will be achieved." Thank you.